Hello, hello. So I just wanted to let you know what we are talking about today. Hold on, I'm just popping up the chat really quick. Let's see. Hi, Heather. Let's see. Okay. So just to let you know what we've been talking about, I wanted to talk about, which I feel like is really aligned with what we've been talking about for you, is not getting what we want is exactly what we want. And this has been coming up so much with my private clients that I feel like it's one of those things that I feel like I need to let people, maybe I don't need to let them know, they might know, but to give a training where people understand the depth of that and like what that means and how to navigate it. Right. So, when we really think about what we want, the first thing that I usually ask people is I ask them to ask, like, what do you fear would happen? But there's a lot of ways to go about that. Fear is a really good one, but there might be other things that just don't want it, right? So I feel like you've probably heard me talk about the deepest fear inventory. This is something that I got from Karen Elliott. She's the one that wrote Existential Kink, which I have dropped that in the community. Um, but she would have her clients write out 50 fears for whatever they wanted. And like the first, I don't know, probably 30 to 40 are pretty normal, pretty similar, pretty like everybody has the same fear, right? Rich people are bad. I'll be boring. I'll spend it all. People will be jealous of me. We all have the same, what do I want to say? I don't want to like discredit what people are feeling, but the same, like, I don't want to say the root cause, but what's above the root? We all have these stories, right? And there's a reason we all have them is because they're common, right? And yes, we might not all have the exact same stories, but I would say the majority of stories that we do have are similar. And it's also the reason why those stories are not the ones that we work with because they're the ones that our brain is attaching onto to keep us from really unearthing what's actually going on, right? So for something like this, I always have people ask, like, what do they fear would happen, right? And then after, when you do the deepest fear inventory and you have like the last 10, the last five specifically will be very unconscious. It's one of those processes where I actually unearthed one of my biggest things was that, this amount of money, which was hundreds of $1,000s equals trauma or death. Because for those of you that don't know, my grandmother and my dad passed away, I got money, right? And so, I've been carrying that misunderstanding around, not only in my brain, but in my body for a lot of years, right? And it took me years to unearth it with this exercise, which really, really was like, wow, that's powerful. And so the reason that I bring this up, right, is because if we don't have what we want, there are always parts of us that are really happy, that are benefiting, that actually love that we didn't get what we wanted. And our job is to figure out why and who those parts are and kind of connect with them. With the work that I do, like I would divide the work that I do not from a framework perspective, but how I see the progression of this work is the beginning is very much like healing, motherly, caring, like reparenting, remothering, reconnecting with those young versions of ourselves, those children versions of ourselves. There's a reason why when we argue, we tend to revert to like childlike behavior because that part of us really is a child, right? Um, so really connecting into what parts of us is actually really happy that we don't have what we want or really feel like their needs are getting met because we don't have what we want. A really good example of this is like if a part of you already feels like this has been a big story for me lately, actually, of like everybody wants something from me, which you cannot have that belief in the work that I do, right? Like it's just not, a belief that you can have and healthily do the work that I do, which I find really interesting because growing up, I can see where that belief came from, but also just from dynamics and relationships that I allow myself to be in that also kind of cross references into, my client work. And so for me, if I feel like everyone wants something from me and I'm always giving, 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 there's a part of me that feels very exhausted from that. And, I've been very transparent. I think, Heather, that somebody in my family recently committed suicide. And that's been a really really tough thing for me. And so when I look at the things that I don't have that I want, and I really sit down and I'm honest with myself around how I actually felt about the things that I wanted, like for example, maybe my goals in November, right? Or whatever I don't have. When I really sit down with it and I really look at it, there's a part of me that's always like, oof, I'm glad I didn't do that. I'm glad I didn't get that. I'm glad I didn't experience that. And so our job is to connect with that. But I think the point that I was trying to make about this reparenting work versus, and then you move into more shadow work, which is what Karen Elliott does. It's embracing those parts of us that are needy or dramatic or just don't want what we want, like whatever, versus loving on them. And listen, there's not a right or wrong way to do it. You get to decide. I've been very mindful about how I talk about this because I think for me, there was a period where I needed a lot of like love and reparenting and, reparenting those younger versions of myself. And now I feel like I'm more in a phase of just honoring those parts of me that want to be bratty and just being okay and just being okay with my humanness, right? And so I really want to just talk about the reframe of people have in their brains. Do you identify as a person that never gets what they want? Because if you identify, if you're like, oh, yeah, that's me. If you identify as that type of person, you will continue to be that person until you break that identity, right? I want to really let that sink in. Because if you identify as that, then that's your natural and normal and that's your baseline. In my world, we attract in and allow ourselves to experience and hold the things that feel natural and normal to our nervous system, our brain and body, right? And so really just allowing ourselves to be like, wait a minute, is not getting what I want exactly what I want. And it is, I promise you. There's no way that there's no one that's ever came into my world that we've ever done this work around that said, I didn't get what I want. And there was no part of me that was happy about it. There was no part of me that felt relieved about it. So if you're very clear on the part of you that doesn't want it, then we get clear on why they don't want it, right? Do they feel like they're at capacity? Do they feel like they need to make more time? Like that's my story, right? I feel like there's parts of me that feels like I'm at capacity. So there's a lot of things moving and changing with my business right now because I have to be very mindful of my energy for the people that, pay to be in my world. And so being very mindful of my capacity and reminding myself that if I don't have exactly what I want, it's because a part of me didn't want it or feel safe to experience it or worthy or whatever the story is. And then reframe it as I do get what I want. And then from there, can you start identifying as somebody that is, I get exactly what I want? Because once you start identifying as a person who gets like that, you get what you want, you take your power back. This is really a power flex. A lot of times people, and I'm going to be completely transparent because I think the learning and lesson here is that powerful, is that how do I want to articulate this? So there is a part of me that just loves to be like dramatic and be like, like no one's seeing me and hearing me and no one's, la, 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 la. And a lot of times when I don't get what I want, it's because that part of me really is like almost like being a teenager and like wanting to be seen and validated. And instead of like loving on her, which I do, allowing her to just be. I think there's a lot in the space of deep healing work where we try to change that part of us versus just letting that part of us be. And ironically, if we just let them be and let them be dramatic or let them while out or let them whatever, they kind of integrate, they kind of chill out, they kind of take a step back because they're just trying to be like seen and heard and validated, right? And so when you start identifying as the person that gets exactly what you want, no matter what happens, you are actually getting exactly what you want on some level, some part of you wanted it, then you take your power back. Then you can get back in the driver's seat and say, okay. And this image came to me earlier of like a way to explain this of like being in the car and all parts of you are in the car. So maybe it's a van because we do have a lot of parts of us, right? I don't know that we have scientific data on this. I've learned this from a few people that do hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming, and different schools of thought hold different and like they hold different views on this. So the general consensus is that we are aware, something like 6 to 8 parts of us, maybe a little bit more, and then we have a lot of other parts. I want to say like in the 30s of unaware parts, right? And whether or not you believe this is irrelevant, it's I think it's just a good way to describe it is just it's a model of the world, a model of the way that we see things. And I know that if you've been in my world and you've done any of this work, you've experienced it for yourself, right? And so maybe it's a van that all the parts are in. It depends on how many of those parts you've actually connected with. But I would say a van for like maybe, 6, 8, 10 parts, something like that. But I want you to imagine which one of your parts right now is driving, which one's in the driver's seat, right? So for me, I can just name off a few of my parts. I have a lot more, but like one of my big parts that I have to work with a lot is my protector because, I do have this background with trauma. And he's a guy and he's militant. He's actually in like military clothes when I connect with him. It's a guy and his name is Alex and he's extremely like this, which is crazy because my personality is actually not like that. But I notice that when he comes out, my whole body language shifts. And he comes out when I don't feel safe, whether or not I perceive the perception of my experience isn't safe, whether or not I'm in immediate danger doesn't matter, right? So he's one of my parts. And for a long, long time, he was driving. He was in the driver's seat. And I now clearly see how he was blocking me from the things I actually desired. But because he was my protector, I let him stay in the driver's seat because I thought that I had a misunderstanding that I could only be safe when he was driving. So therefore I couldn't have what I wanted, right? So once I connected with him, I was able to move him from the driver's seat. I wasn't able to immediately put him in the back seat. I was able to be like, hey, do you want to like take a break, right? Do you want to have a vacation, and kind of move him over to the passenger seat and then move him. And then all my other parts, can move, right? And so I connect in a lot right now with like my highest version of myself. And then there's like this dark feminine version of me who's also the highest version of myself, but she's a little more mischievous, devious, dramatic. I've recently learned how to connect back into being okay with how dramatic I am. I'm a very dramatic human and being okay with that because I think society especially tells women that it's not okay. And I just get to be who I am. And all of my parts are safe to feel seen and heard, right? So I feel like a lot of times they are driving or the intention is to let them drive, but there's still parts of me that don't feel safe, don't feel seen, don't feel heard, whatever, that are still driving. So I want you to really think about this concept that you're not getting what you want, because I guarantee you that one of those parts are getting exactly what they want. And especially if it's related to safety, because our brain is hardwired to protect us and keep us safe, those parts, there tends to be a lot there with safety, right? And so once you start identifying as like, okay, which part of me identifies as a person who gets what I want? That's usually going to be this higher version of yourself. And you allow her or him take the steering wheel. What then happens? Who moves over? Who moves to the back? And then what things do you start thinking and feeling and experiencing from that place? Our brains are hardwired to fact check, okay, which is I don't have time to go into it today because it's a whole training on its own. But we are always fact checking what we're thinking, right? And so that's why you maybe had the experience of maybe something didn't go the way you wanted it to, and you had the thought of, "See, I knew that wouldn't work out," right? Because our brains are always trying to fact check, always making sure that what we believe is true, and always seeking that validation as well from others of like, oh, what I feel, what I experience is true. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's literally just the way our brains are wired. But if your core belief and the part of you that's driving the car is the identity that I don't get what I want, you're always going to find a way to prove to yourself that's true. So what if we don't say, oh, that's just a limiting belief? What if we just say, oh, that's a part of me, right? That doesn't need to drive anymore. Right. So let's not even look at it from like we need to heal it. We need to fix it. Because that is one thing that I notice that people get caught in this healing cycle. And that's not what I want for anybody. I want them to be like, okay, I get to do this work and be successful and make the money I want. So it's like, okay, just move the part of you somewhere else in the car, preferably not in the front seat. Right. And then the part of you that identifies as I get exactly what I want. Do you feel the power in that? Even like just saying it, I can feel the difference in my body of like, I am the person that gets what I want. And because I get what I want, I'm now in control. Right. And so now it is a hard pill to swallow because then you have to take, responsibility for all the things that maybe we don't love, right, that have happened to us. And I'm not saying that bad things happen to people like I want to be mindful about that. Being trauma trained, like we never want people to think that they've had something happen because they sought it out. That's not what I'm saying here. But I do want to invite people into feeling like they are in control of their reality, of their response, of the way they're being, of the way they're running their business. Right? Yeah, the image of like driving in a car is such a good one. I feel like that's a really good way to describe it, right? Just allowing all of them to be there, because I feel like, and even doing hypnosis, like I have a background in hypnosis, which I love and I pull out when I need to, but I don't even really do a lot of formal hypnosis these days, because I don't need to. But I also feel like a lot of people tend to fight it, because instead of allowing that part of you to just be put in a different seating position, sometimes we just try to get rid of it. And our bodies don't allow us to do that and process that properly, because we're not getting rid of it. There's nothing wrong with that part. That part just needed to not drive and to be seen and heard, right? Yeah. And so really think about, and I want you just to imagine, like, which version of you is that version that it gets exactly what you want, right? What does that version look like, feel like, think like, hold their body like, dress like really embody them? And do they feel safe to take the wheel? Do they feel safe to be in the driver's seat? You know, and just notice how different that feels in your body, just by shifting the perspective of, wait a minute, I am in control. The world isn't happening to me. Life isn't happening to me. It's happening for me. And I can choose to respond. And this is a little bit more of an advanced thing that I don't want to go into too much in this live, but like the concept of we go first. And this is something that my private clients experience a lot of, that I want to talk more about, because it's crazy. I'll tell them, if there's a dynamic that isn't going well, whether it's with another human or your business or money or whatever, if you go first and you make the shifts energetically and in your body, everything around you will change. They will follow. And a good example of this, because I've realized it's kind of high level, is like, let's say you and your partner are fighting. And the natural normal thing is to do is to be reactive, and you respond and then he responds, and it just kind of rolls downhill. But if you change, like if you connect with that version of you that wants to be reactive, calm her down, and then respond from that place, you're going to respond differently. And then he's going to vibe it. He's going to feel that you're responding differently, and then he's going to respond differently. And it literally changes your reality. Really think about what I just said. I'm literally handing you a magic wand on how to change your reality. We go first, we make the change, and then everything else will change around us. And if you don't believe me, you can try this on for a week. This is something that, I've helped people change relationships with their partner or food, or, I've actually helped people quit smoking, like, because when all parts of us feel seen and heard and safe, and then we make decisions, and then we embody the way that we move through life from that higher version of ourselves, everything around us changes. And it really is that simple. People want to make things out to be so complex and complicated, but the truth is things are actually really simple. The only thing that makes them complicated is us. We like to complicate things, right? Yeah, you've done that in your relationship. So what if you did it like in your business, or, with money, like we can connect into our business and money from that perspective as well. The only reason that we're in the situation that we're in is there's a part of us really benefiting from it. There's a part of us that really likes it. Like, I've had clients also come to me and say that there was a part of them that, they had a lot of siblings and they didn't feel very seen and heard by their parents growing up. And so struggling in their business is one way they learned how to connect with their parents, that they could always complain that things weren't going well in their business and that they needed help and this and that. So there's a part of them that felt very validated by not being successful, because in their mind, they had a misunderstanding of, oh, well, when I don't get what I want, I actually get love and attention from my parents. Well, no wonder they weren't being successful, because your brain and body will fight for that, because that identity is very much tied to, being parented, being loved. And so I could clearly see how that was blocking her. And once we shifted that, her whole dynamic in her business shifted. So really think about, okay, what parts of me are actually benefiting from not having what I want? And once I connect in with them, who do I want in the driver's seat? Right. And imagining them driving the car, and imagining what's going to shift from that version of you driving. That's a really, really powerful takeaway, right? Really think about that. of what we can change and just a matter of a week, right? Especially for those of us that are very visible and online. And if we show up in a different way, things will shift. The people around us will shift, the clients that, you know, are in our world, like things start to shift. And so I really just want to leave with the reframe of, does it feel safe? Do you feel okay now identifying as a human who gets what they want? And can you, for this week, just choose to make decisions from that place, right? Of like, I am somebody who gets what I want. And just watch that you'll notice if you identify in with it and have that sensation in your body and like really hold your body that way, you'll notice. And we actually do have data on this that the we can have chemical changes from physiological changes in our body. That's why I have you guys change your posture a lot. And so start to make decisions from that place of like, I am a person that gets exactly what I want. And I feel so empowered because yes, I may have blocked myself from getting what I want, which I don't believe that. You know, I believe that everything happens on the time it's supposed to happen. But like the truth is that there was no block. There was just a part of you that actually really was getting what they desired. And from that, I know that's a hard pill to swallow, but from there you can be like, but because it's me, I can change it. Not the world, not the algorithm. It's not people not buying more at Christmas. It's not this or that. It's me. And I can, and that's actually okay because I can change me. I can change that, right? That's a very empowering message for people to understand that, oh, I can change. I can choose differently. And from there, things will change. I'm just reading the chat. I love this. I've done this with some of my kids. I do. Oh, I love that. Yes, please try that. Let me know how it goes. I would love, love, love to hear. And I hope this was helpful. And hopefully, I'll see you on Thursday. Have a good one. Bye.